Welcome to the Ebony Role Players podcast. I'm your host, Edie Evans Hyde, singer, performer, and founder of Ebony Role Players. As a Black theater company in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Ebony Role Players strives to inspire, educate, and engage the cultures of our community. In this podcast, we take a deeper dive into the topics and issues surrounding the stories that we tell. So let's jump right into some meaningful dialogue and celebrate the diverse communities that we share. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ebony Role Players podcast. I'm Edie Evans Hyde, and I am excited to talk to you today and have a wonderful guest who I'm going to get to know as you all are getting to know him as well. His name is Jevon Willis, and he is the Hope College. He's the director of Hope College Center of Diversity. And we are so happy that he has joined us today because we're going to talk a little bit about what he does and how important things are with the position that he has at the college and a few other things we'll probably get into so we get to know each other a little bit better. So Jevon, would you like to take it away? I want to welcome you and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
So first of all, Edie, thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with you and your listeners. It's really good to be here. So yes, as you indicated, I serve as the director for the Center for Diversity and Inclusion at this amazing little private liberal arts college in little old Holland, Michigan. And I've been here for, this is my fourth year with the college, going on my fifth academic year. And when I was hired here, I first came in as the assistant director for the center. My predecessor is one of the Grand Rapids daughters, Vanessa Green.
Yes.
Who I have so much admiration for, and who obviously now serves as the executive director for the Grand Rapids African American Health Institute. So shout out to Vanessa Green. So one of the things though that was really important for me, Vanessa and I worked together for about 2.5 years, and when she decided to leave Hope or to resign from this role to transition into that role, I wanted to make sure, as much as I could, that the good work, the good soil, the good foundation, the programs and events, the legacy, the history connected to this space did not diminish, but to be sustained. And so, in part, I would say part of the reason why I'm in this space is one of the ways that for me was, I think, really just the ability to honor the good work of a colleague and someone that I highly respect and continue to respect, to make sure that the promised land could be seen, could be experienced, right? Things could be different.
Right. That is so great. And yes, I do know her, and I was working at the college when she was there, and to have her move to a new space in healthcare and having you take that place is really wonderful for both institutions. And like I said, really glad that you are in that space. You mentioned you didn't mention mountaintop, but you mentioned, what was the word you just used? It was vision, or
in the promised land.
The promised land, which we will come back and talk about in just a few minutes. I made a mistake in introducing you first because I want to tell you this quote that I have, and I thought maybe this would even get us a little further down the road about education and that type of thing. So let me tell everyone the quote, and then we can start from there. I believe that education is the civil rights issue of our generation. And if you care about promoting opportunity and reducing inequality, the classroom is the place to start. Great teaching is about so much more than education. It is a daily fight for social justice. And that quote is by Arne Duncan. And Arne Duncan was the United States Secretary of Defense from 2009 to 2015, which I think was under Barack Obama, if I remember correctly. And I thought that was such a wonderful quote, because right now, and maybe you can speak to this, is I feel like education is a little bit under attack, a little bit putting people in situations now that I don't understand why it is. And this is why what you do in diversity, equity, and inclusion often in spaces really help students who are in college, help students understand the world that you are going to be pushing them out into. Hope College is pushing them out into. Other colleges are pushing them out into. And so what do you think about that quote and where we are now?
When you talk about opportunity, right, I think one of the things when you talk about education being under threat, I think one of the ways that I see that is some of the criticisms around, I would say, critical thinking in general, but you hear some of the pushback around, critical race theory and some of these other kinds of things that really help us to hopefully look beyond the surface level of these issues. And so even when we talk about diversity and access to education in the educational setting, I think oftentimes one of the realities that still exists is even though many of our students of color still have access to the classroom, is there equity in those spaces, right? Are they experiencing those spaces in the same ways as some of their majority colleagues or peers, should I say, their peers? Is there differential treatment, or are they getting similar types of treatment in terms of the supports and the kinds of things that would allow them to be successful? Are they being encouraged or advised, right, to do the kinds of things that really connect to their real potential, their real skills, and not what people perceive? And so it's important in this work to stay really critical, because I think it's really easy. And one of the things sometimes that I can see is that we'll have many of our sometimes students of color, our first gen students who will come into this space. And if they don't have the supports, they don't have that connection to community, they can easily, right, leave the space before graduation, before getting to degree. And sometimes the illusion is, well, they couldn't be successful because of, right, their background, the skin that they're in, the high schools that they come from, those kinds of things. And I think the opportunity, the challenge is, especially when students get to this space, or what are those real barriers, or the things that are creating these differentiating experiences, and taking inventory and understanding the culture that exists in these classroom spaces and on the campus spaces at large, right, is so important. I think to have a really a sense of what creates these different experiences. And so I'm of the opinion that many of the students that I meet that occupy this space, that are able to be admitted students at Hope College, already have some of the demonstrations of being able to have success in the classroom. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here or accepted. Yes. But oftentimes, the realities that are created by this culture, and I think an ability oftentimes to meet those needs, are the changes that need to happen, or the kinds of things that need to happen. And if those things don't happen, then there needs to be, I think, more critical in asking why, right? What doesn't allow these students to thrive and to persist, right, in these environments. But part of that, I think, what's so important is connection to community of support, in order to really have the kinds of experiences that are needed to be able to thrive in these kind of spaces.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for people to realize, what your job is, and how you get a whole environment and a whole educational culture to understand that there are things that they need to think about when they're presenting certain things to people of color, or, whatever is not the majority. And I've talked to two other people in your category, DEI and educational colleges and things like that, educational areas. And I think there's a fear of that going away. And but yet I still think people are holding on to that, and because they see a positive in having the students be successful when they go out into the community, not only people of color, but I also think the majority as well, is as successful. It's like a win-win situation that they all work together on it. And so what have been the outcomes that you think, and you've been there 4 years now, so you've been able to see one class or whatever go through. What are some of the outcomes that you think that the programs that you have offered, the DEI opportunities, what has been very positive about that in the terms of where you work?
Right. So a large part of what we're charged with in my area of CDI is empower students to excel academically, right, and to flourish, the opportunities to flourish as socially responsible members, right, in the diverse world. That's a large that kind of summarizes kind of the things that we do. And so to that end, it's the programs and events, I think, that create the awareness and hopefully the consciousness of, I think, the ways that many people groups, and particularly diverse groups, are treated on kind of, if you will, the national level, or the kinds of things that we see culturally. But more important, what I feel more importantly, and I think the area of my work that I really enjoy are the resources to our students. Mm-hmm. And I would say one of the outcomes is connected community. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm so excited about is, if you were to ask me how to describe the group of students that I work with, I would, number one, say brilliant. Okay. Because without question, their genius is what allows them to occupy the space, the demonstrations of that. And so how do you continue to build or utilize that, right, in ways that help them to develop, I think, have our the opportunities that are connected in my space. And so with the cultural, I would say our framework is what we call our class system. So looking at culturally competence, leadership, opportunities for leadership development, mm-hmm. Advocacy and support, as you would imagine, student success, and spiritual enrichment and fulfillment. And so as we're working with students, it's making sure that they have opportunities to continue to develop, right, in their leadership, to develop in their professional development, or the things that they aspire connected to their professional development, and really just supporting that, putting them in spaces and environments where internships and what do you call it, job shadowing opportunities, the kinds of things that allow them to experience, right, what it's like to be in those fields, and getting a real clear sense of those kind of day-to-day things. And that's really important. But the community, or I think the ability to really be connected, is as I said, is really an area of focus. And so, and it's really the things that have to do with that sense of belonging, right? Mm-hmm. How do our students know that they belong, are full members of Hope College? And I think when you talk about any predominantly white institution, our underrepresented students, our students of color, oftentimes, right, don't always feel that sense of belonging or connection. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I highly oftentimes encourage our students to do is to trust what their body tells them about belonging. Your body will tell you if you belong. You know it. You feel safe. You feel secure. You feel relaxed. You can sleep. The kinds of things that don't give you anxiety or distractions. Because to me, I think anything that takes away or that can distract from our students' ability to really focus on their ability to be the best student that they can be, right, is a problem. And it's problematic, and things that as an advisor, as a leader in this space, as someone on this campus, wanting to make sure that we help to minimize, if not eliminate, as much as possible. And so that sense of, so really connected to that sense of belonging. I think one of the things that I really love is the work that we do with our student organizations. And all of our student organizations, the 7 that I work really closely with would be considered affinity groups. And so you have like your Black Student Union, your Asian Student Union, your Latino Student Organization, your Women of Color United, our Men's Enrichment Network, PRISM, our LGBTQ plus group, and HIAC, our Hopes Advocates for Invisible Condition. And so you have these groups whose identities are based on just that, identities in part. But I think one of the things that many of our students do really well is understand this intersectional consideration, and that we're more like than we are different in ways that our identities intersect. And so, for example, you can be Black and gay. You can be Afro-Latino, right, an intersection, based on ethnicity and race, right? So seeing these intersections in ways, again, that I think we're more alike or similar than different is significantly important. But for, I think, our students here at Hope College, is, I think, one of the things that I see that really brings our students together is their desire for hope to be better.
Right. Right.
And there's a lot of things that they do in terms of awareness, programming, and education opportunities, creating those spaces for peer-to-peer interactions. But one of the things that you were alluding to before that I think is so important is it does provide an opportunity for our majority students to have cross-cultural interactions. But they have to take the first steps. Right, I think walking into the spaces where our students occupy, and being willing to be uncomfortable, and I would say to be temporarily uncomfortable while they're occupying spaces that might not be designed for them, or the spaces that they're really used to frequenting. But I do think the potential for relationship, for exposure and interaction should not come at the expense of our students of color. And oftentimes I feel like in these spaces, many of them are burdened with that pressure to disclose, that pressure to educate, pressure to make individuals aware of their realities, because they continue to see it dismissed.
Yeah.
And so again, to me, the importance of community is the ability that pressure burden is not solely on one individual.
Yes.
But that is shared and supported, right, in ways that allow for, hopefully, our students to continue to be the students that they need to be, to continue to have the kind of focus that they need to have, while I think they're still in spaces where they're being observed.
Yes.
Are watching and trying to understand what it's like to be them in their skin.
There's 2 things that you said there that I love, is the fact that intersectionality is very important, because people are not monolithic. And as soon as we, figure that out, because people want it to be monolithic, and it's just not. I know that having Ebony Road Players do the theater productions that we do, we try to not be monolithic and kind of show the stories of not only Black people, but how it coincides with so many other things, other people. Our histories coincide in many ways. And yes, being the only one doing that, putting that burden on them that they have to be the person that's teaching everyone, I have felt that as an adult. So I can't even imagine, being a student and trying to learn what they need to learn to be out to get their jobs and be out in the community. That has to be difficult. And you're right. The majority needs to take this first step, but you got to have all that stuff offered for them to do it. And I like what you just said there. It's very important. And this is where I think Ebony Road Players has been very successful in offering things for students with you at Hope. We've been to Aquinas. We've done things at Davenport. And of course, it's usually during Black History Month. And then we try to offer things during other times as well. But it does bring a diversity of people in who want to know certain stories, who've not been taught certain stories. So not just for our African-American people, but everyone in general. And that takes me to the show that we're going to be doing for you guys. This probably will not air before we do the show, but it'll air afterwards. And I want you to talk a little bit about how you think the arts is part of that, and why we are coming in to do a wonderful reading for you. Is that part of the bringing people together to talk about a particular piece of history? How does that work in your mind, that we're coming into doing a show called The Mountaintop by Katari Hall, great Black woman playwright. The story is kind of off-centered a little bit. It's about humanizing this amazing man who did amazing work by being just a regular man. Tell me what your choices were on that, and how you think that will fit into the jobs, the DEI and community thing that you're putting out there at Hope.
I think one of the things I was really attracted to was just that humanizing. I think Dr. King, as a martyr, I think there's ways that that's kind of been in, and I think the best way I could describe it is almost feels romanticized.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think you can easily forget that he was not only a human, he was a father, right? He was a son,
right,
brother, like he was a man.
Right.
And so, and sometimes I wonder if, in Dr., if part of our genius or brilliance can only be realized after our death.
Mm.
When I think about Black leadership, right, there's a sense of this kind of stark finality or fatality, yeah. And so, yeah, and so to me, it creates opportunities to unpack some of those things that I feel like that are so tenuous and so real, that we really, I think, as and for me, as I think about our emerging leaders, and that's how I would describe many of our students and many of those who will be in that audience. I think it's important for them not to take on the things that they do kind of with this hero, shero kind of mentality, right? But again, that's why this emphasis for me on community is so important. And obviously, I feel like Dr. King was such a master of really understanding how to live that out in many of the ways that he had just expressed the importance of being connected. Despite how messy that we can be as people, we still need each other, right? Mm-hmm. And again, even when we talk about this work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not something that can ever happen in isolation, but there has to be, right, a collective of people with a common goal, common vision. And I think obviously, Dr. King was so instrumental in being able to do that without the technology and tools that we have. And I think that's one of the things I always feel so impressed with. It's like you didn't have access to the things that we have, and yet this message was clearly understood in ways that, in such a way that it became a threat, right? Threatening. And so I'm just really excited for our community to get a better sense of I think those things that have to do with the Black experience and that humanness. And I think for many of particularly our students of color and our Black students, give them permission to just be,
right,
not have to teach.
Right. And I think that's the whole reason I put this theater company together, is to be able to just sit back and watch all the audience members take in things and see what they can get out of it, that at the end, they can have a conversation if they want to. And like you said, it's nothing they have to go out and teach, and have that put on their back. But I love the arts in general, and on how we can have these discussions without putting anyone in some kind of space that's overwhelming to them, that's hard for them. And so I'm really happy to be able to come over and do this. And the other thing about Martin Luther King too is that he was so young. You know, I have a son and daughter who are in their 30s. And to think of that kind of work that he did at such a young age, you almost think he was older. You know, he was, when you really think about that, he was a young man, and he was, you know, he was just a regular person who did extraordinary things at a very young age. And I think that's what this play to me is about. And the other thing that I think is really important for me is that when people want to use Martin Luther King as a point of, well, Martin Luther King wanted everyone to, you know, be colorblind about things, you know, things that he said that was for the Black audience. And now the majority audience takes it as, well, why are you saying this about us? Why does it have to be a Black student union? Well, you know, Martin Luther King wouldn't have wanted that. Well, those are two different groups of people who were using him for two different reasons. And I just wanted to be able to have a conversation about that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I
And
see.
it's just hard, and it's so disheartening to get a sense of how yeah, something so pure, right, can be used in really counterintuitively.
I in my you know, non-educated sense, you know, they're flipping the script all the time. It's always a flip the script. And you want to say, but that wasn't what it meant at that time. Whatever you're doing is not, or saying is not what it meant at that time. And, you know, who knew we would be in the position in 2023 that we are in now? He wouldn't have thought that. And so, but the work is still being done. As in the play, it says, you know, and the baton passes on. And I'm really excited to be able to present this, this idea of the humanization of Martin Luther King, and hope to have a nice conversation about it. So I am so happy, again, to be able to bring this to you as a staged reading, because we're not doing the whole play. We are reading the play with a few movements in it, but I think it'll be very effective. So yeah, I am so happy to get to know you, and I'm hoping that we can talk again a little deeper into some things, but I wanted my audience to know who you were, wanted to know what Hope College is doing, and how important the world of DEI is and still is, no matter what they're trying to do to eliminate it in many instances. But I like to talk to people who are able to explain to other people why it is important in this time to really have something like this in an educational setting.
Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and do you have anything you'd like to end with? This is, like I said, I don't want to take too much time, but I really wanted to hear your voice and see you, and thank you for including Ebony Role Players, and just, you know, talk about how important it is to do what you do and how the arts community can help you out in this.
Yeah, Edie, to be honest with you, I am living my dream and feel amazing gratitude for being able to be in a space where I can be for students what I know that I needed and many others needed. And the weight and opportunities that I think connects to this space is something that I do not take lightly. And I really feel like one of the things that I really enjoy about my work in particular is I know that I'm a part of empowering many of our future generations, the folks who are not only thinking about being the change, but they're practicing and living that out in spaces like hope. And to be connected to being a part of helping to shape these future leaders, to me is an amazing opportunity. And I would say, if you get to see what I see on a daily basis, to me, these are the spaces where I see the hope. Many of our young people, I think sometimes, depending on generations, you could think that this generation is disconnected, does not care, or is apathetic. But what I see is really highly committed thought partners who are not only, I think, trying to challenge the future, but even, I think, people like my 45-year-old self pushing me to continue to think, to evolve, right? And to make sure that the kinds of things that we're doing are all aligned to equity. And one of the things that I often say is equity has never been the thing that discriminates as a tool.
Exactly.
It's the people, but it's the way that we use that, right? And so it's the people. I love my community because my community tells the truth.
Yes.
My community holds me responsible or accountable, but really, but also my community encourages me and helps to teach me and provides opportunity for grace as I'm continuing to develop and grow and to better understand what it is to be Jevon Willis in this space and wanting to do this well in the ways that I get to shepherd and help to lead our young people. And so I just want our world and your listeners to be encouraged, because I know this is, I don't think there's anything new to the hurt and the pain that I think we feel oftentimes in this world. And as I think about the continued gun violence, police violence, all of the threats, but there is hope. There is a Hope College. No, not trying to be punny, but students of color who are here, who are really seizing the moment to do the things that they need to do to be those world changers. And I'm just proud to be able to get the glimpses of what not just is, but what can be.
Yes, that was beautifully said. Beautifully said. I love the space that I'm in, that I'm able to do this as well. I feel like between my experiences and my art, that it's now something that I can contribute back to our community to make the community better. And and as much as we can help you out with that, help Hope College have hope for their students, we want to be a part of that. So I thank you so much. I'm going to have you on again after we do our show with you and see, how that went and what was some of the feedback from it. And I'm excited to do it, and I'm so happy that you joined us for this. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more.
I'm looking forward to our future conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jevon Willis. Everyone, this is Jevon Willis, Director of Hope College Center of Diversity, Center for Diversity, I think it is. And you guys, I hope you listen to him, because this is what we're at right now. This is what we're doing, and the hope is there. So thank you for having us hear you, and thank you for coming on our show. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Ebony Road Players podcast. Creating theater with a purpose is our mission, and that is not possible without people like you. We appreciate you joining us for this podcast and for being a part of our diverse community. To view the video version of this episode and gain access to exclusive Ebony Road Players content and perks, join our community on Patreon at patreon.com/Ebony Road Players. In the words of Zora Neale Hurston, quote, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you," unquote. If you have a story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Contact us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website, ebonyroad.org. And we look forward to continuing the conversation next time on the Ebony Role Players podcast.